Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all are back to your screens because we are beginning with the next session for the day by Mumbai chapter. It's going to be an interesting panel discussion on organization change and culture, a must-have skill for leaders, where we have Ajay Solanki as the moderator for panel discussion. We have question man Hemal Manik, Koel Bhattacharya, Chitra, and Prashant Niharkar as panelists for the discussion today. Before we begin with the discussion, let me thank our founding sponsor, Innovation Roots. Innovation Roots is a leading consulting and training service provider, helping organizations to achieve business agility and beyond. It is one of the leaders and pioneers of niche publishing services and well known for content collaboration with global thought leaders, authors, and creators. You can find out more details at www.innovationroots.com. We are also happy to have Agile as one of the sponsors, which is a product offering from Tata Consultancy Services. It is a purely cloud-based enterprise agile planning tool along with DevOps capabilities. Enterprises can use Enterprises can use Agile to adopt agile practices or scale across multiple Scrum and Kanban teams using enterprise scaling frameworks such as SAFe, Disciplined Agile, LESS, and more. You can try out Agile for free up to 20 users for 30 days, and you need to sign up at agile.io for the same. Or you can reach out to us for any kind of inquiries you have, or you want to set up an exclusive product demo of Agile. Check out the Agile page on Agile Network India's website for more information. We are sharing the link in the chat box. And with that, I would like to call upon our moderator, Ajay Solanki, and all the panelists on the microphone and webcam to begin with the discussion and the introduction.
Thank you, Nupur, and welcome to the ANI Mumbai chapter. I welcome the participants and the panelists to today's panel discussion, Organization Change and Culture, a must-have skill for leaders. I am Ajay Solanki, your moderator for today's discussion. I have around 20 years of IT experience with companies like Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Hewlett-Packard, Oracle, etc. I've been associated with ANI as a volunteer for the past around 4 years, helping to organize conferences, monthly meetups, being in the review committee team, etc. I also done few courses like Certified Agile Coach, Team Agile Leadership, Scrum at Scale, LESS, DAD, APMI, CPPMP, etc. Currently, I'm passionate about healing modalities like Qigong and Tai Chi, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and Reiki. All the attendees are requested to type in their questions in the chat box, and we will address few of them later. I request Mr. Hamer to introduce himself.
Thanks, Ajay, for the wonderful introduction. In fact, I was surprised to see a couple of more hidden talents within you. Thank you so much. So friends, my name is Hemal Manik. I'm a business coach and founder of CEO Club. CEO Club is a very unique boardroom coaching concept and an exclusive mastermind community for C-level entrepreneurs. Basically. So something little about me. I have been in the coaching space for close to a decade now. I have coached over 8,000 plus CEOs across 7 different countries. And something that no one knows about me is I started my career as an office boy immediately after my 10th standard exam. And so I'm excited today to be part of this panel and talking with you all on the culture. Why is it really important to change? Thanks, and over to you, Ajay.
Amazing, Hamer. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for attending. Hope everyone is staying safe. My name is Chitra Muthumani, and I have around 17 years of experience in IT. I have been managing and leading change initiatives for organizations across the globe, for clients across North Am, Europe, and Asia. And I'm especially excited today to be here with you because this is a topic which is very very relevant. Especially in the current times, and it's a topic that most of us, be it at the managerial level or at the leadership level, we it's imperative for us to address, right? So looking forward to a great discussion with my fellow co-panelists, and thank you for having me here, Agile Network India.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Koil Bhattacharya. I'm part of the Capgemini India Quality Assurance team. Of late, my focus has been on driving Agile and DevOps transformations for large-scale organizations which are working along with Capgemini. My core interest has been to groom young professionals and to shape up the future generations as we move into the next wave of transformations. So happy to be part of the Agile Network of India and to share my experiences here. Thank you.
Thank you, Koil, and welcome.
Hello everyone, my name is Prashant Neherkar. I am into IT almost for 18 years. Started as a technology trainer, product trainer, work as a Scrum Master, Agile coach, and it's almost 10 years working in this Agile space, from team transformation and now going toward the enterprise Agile transformation, primarily using the SAFe framework. I'm associated with Agile Network India for more than 3 years as a speaker, as a host, and today I'm happy to be here as a panelist to talk on this interesting topic about the culture change in the organization. Looking forward for all of yours contribution and active participation in this panel discussion. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you, Prashant, and welcome. My first question to the panelists is the key business drivers for organizational change or cultural change. Could you name a few?
Yeah, I can take that. And I will probably, there are multiple business drivers, right? Depending on, the organization, the sector that we are, and so on. But I would like to call out a couple. I think at the very onset, it is the market. The market is a very big driver. And, the surrounding ecosystem brings in a lot of changes, and the organization has to be responsive to that. Case in point, I would say a couple of years or a few years back when the BFSI sector was disrupted with the advent of fintechs, right? So they were changing the way we were transferring money, the way we were exchanging money, and also the way we were buying products and shopping. Banks had to, sit up and take notice, and we had to change the way, we were engaging our clients, our customers, and also our product and service offerings. So that, the market is a very big business driver. Secondly, I think again, it is, something which is external. And this happens in highly regulated sectors like healthcare and again BFSI, which is the regulatory environment, right? So any change in laws and any change in legislation which is affecting that particular industry, and hence your organization, will be a business driver. And in many cases you have no option but to comply and be a part of that change. So that is the second business driver. And I think thirdly, I would definitely like to call out that while the first two are external, we can also have an internal intrinsic business driver, which is something which is coming from inside the company or the organization itself. For example, change in structure or change in the organization leadership, right? So the vision changes. So for example, you may have a leader who is very focused on consolidating or sustaining the existing portfolios, or you may have a leader who comes in with a growth mindset, right? So you will see a lot of changes. You may see a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and that itself will bring in a lot of change, right? So you will have change in people, you will have change in culture, you will have change in the processes. So So yeah, so definitely I think, these are some of the business drivers, Ajay.
Good, Chitra. And Ajay, I would like to add on top of what Chitra says. The way Chitra mentioned the first dimension is market. In continuation to that, what I would like to say is the customer centricity. So it's a most popular buzzword today when we talk about the organization culture change. Everything should be structured around the customer. So customer centricity plays a significant role in this organization culture change. Another key element I would like to cite out is the collaboration. Traditionally, the organizations were driven in the structured, command-driven manner. Today, everyone needs to be heard out, and that's the reason the collaboration plays a significant role when we talk about the organization culture change. And one more important factor from my perspective is the knowledge sharing, because when you talk about the cultural change in the organization, we are building a learning organization. So every organization is a learning organization, so that they should be prepared to face any kind of change in the business, so that the knowledge sharing or building a learning organization becomes a key factor for the culture change in an organization. So these are my views, Ajay.
Thank you. Would anybody like to add something?
Yeah. So I think just to build on what Chitra and Prashant have just mentioned, if we were just to ask a basic question, who accelerated the digital agenda of the organizations? The CEO, the CIO, or COVID-19? The answer is obvious. So organizational change is necessary not only for growth and for success, but also for survival, and organizations need to adapt to these changes that are based upon a lot of things that are changing around in the ecosystem. So that will actually enable the organizations to keep themselves relevant and bring what is needed to the customers. So Ajay, maybe I can cite an example over here. If we look at the current pandemic and how we had acceleration of adoption of digital across sectors, let me focus on these sectors which were less technology driven. For instance, the education sector. So now we have all these digital classrooms enabled, everybody shifting into digital platforms for education. And similarly, we have the healthcare sector, where we have all healthcare consultations being done to the extent possible online. Now, these were not the segments where traditionally we had actually seen a large wave of transformation. Similarly, we're also seeing a lot of transformation in the financial segment. So earlier, while there was a shift from banks into having mobile payment options, but during the lockdown, the retail and the e-commerce just hit the roof. And that is where the mobile payment platforms really saw a surge in terms of the users going for it, because it is much more contactless. So all of these changes are based on the basic alignment that was required to meet up the situational demands. And people had to reimagine the basic setup of work itself. How do they actually continue the business continuity that is required? So if I just look at it, we really have two broad-based segments of organizational change. Some of these changes are sweeping changes, the ones that we are talking about or we are looking at in terms of the big digital transformation. So here we have a substantial evolution that happens in the direction which is set up by the company. So for ensuring that we're able to, actually give a direction to the company, it will be, entailing other changes like strategic changes. There could be changes in the organizational structure. There could be changes in the team structure, the way in which people are functioning, and the way in which people engagement is happening across the organization. Obviously, the underlying essence has to be also change in the business processes, the operational processes, etc. So all of this is going to actually enable a very huge wave of transformation. This also sees, to a certain extent, some level of creative disruptions. So for instance, there could be secondary impacts on other organizations. Now that all of us are working from home, and this has become the new normal practice, Organizations which were earlier making infrastructure and devices for office spaces have now actually shifted their focus into developing more of home facilities, which enable home office kind of environment to be created and people to continue working. So a shift in one thing, or epoch-making events that are currently happening will have cascading and secondary effects on other areas as well. So these are more dramatic and radical shifts, I would say. But apart from this, there are more modest shifts and more adaptive changes. So just to conclude on this, I would say, before we moved into this COVID pandemic, there were other changes that we actually saw that were happening in our office premises. For instance, we had a lot of focus in terms of energy saving, conservation, etc., because of which carpooling apps were brought in so that people could share their rides while they were traveling to office and back. Similarly, we saw installation of large solar panels within the organization. So that was also something to do with having more smart lighting, energy conservation, and simpler things like having even a basic food app in order to ensure that we're not building on queues in the cafeteria. So all of these are much more adaptive changes, more incremental in nature. But yes, when we do have something like a big pandemic, we will face a radical change in the organization. So I think with that, I would like to close in terms of the basic necessities that actually drive the organizational change.
Thank you, Koyal. So what we see here is we have total disruption with pandemics, and the things which were earlier supposed to be impossible, like people didn't allow working from home, now has become the norm for us. Also, we have banks which were there. Now we have digital currencies which are there. Google Pay, Paytm, all these people have come into the field and they have actually disrupted the market. So my second question would be, why do we need an organizational or a cultural change?
Okay, Ajay, I can take this up. Lovely. In fact, this is question is in the continuation with the previous one, and I agree with Chitra, Prashant, and Koyal. We are looking at one is the external disruption. Okay, and we got to understand the trend of the external disruption. If you see practically in 90s, mid 90s, the disruption used to happen in every 20 years. Okay, and then slowly as we started approaching the end of 19th century, the disruption started happening in every 10 years. But if you see in the last few years, now this disruption is happening every 5 years. And that's what I've been saying to entrepreneurs and CEOs. You would not be or should not be surprised with the way technology and the robotics and the AI coming in place. The disruption will start happening in every 3 years. Okay, so either you are the part of that change who is disrupting the industry, or you are adapting to the disruption or the change happening. Okay, what is your choice? Which area you want to position yourself to be? You want to be the follower who's look at COVID, right? This was one of the thing which practically almost 2 decades ago people were talking about. There can be a bio star scenario which would change the world, right? The talks were on, but did anybody foresee that and was prepared to be part of this change? So either you wait for the external change to happen and then adapt yourself, or can we think in this time of change, how can I start disrupting the world? We have the best of the technologies. Okay, so major is two sides. Think about it. What is your driver? Do you want to be in the space of innovation? Do you want to be in the space of leading the industry? Yes, it's going to be challenging. If you got to disrupt any industry, it's not something as easier as you follow the change. So which space you want to be? That's the question one needs to think and then start working, analyzing what is the difference want to make in the industry 5 to 10 years from now.
So would anybody like to add? Wonderful point brought about by Hemal. Either disrupt or be disrupted. So I mean that's the trend which is going to come back in the next coming years, the next few years. So probably the next question would be, When you bring in a new leader, he has a whole lot of responsibility on his head. So when a new leader comes in, he would like to change or influence the culture according to his vision. How difficult is it to change the culture? Or should the leader really try to change the culture? What are the benefits and pitfalls of changing the cultures for the employees or the organizations? Or in short, how should the leader adapt to drive the change or for the results?
Yeah, I think I'd like to take a stab at it. It's this question has a lot of dimensions, but nevertheless, I will try. I think, we all say, right, change is the only constant. We've heard that. But even if it's something as small as changing a personal habit of ours, it's very difficult, right? So, and here we're talking about large scale organization change, and culture is, it's again a very intangible component, right? It makes up the people, the tools, the models, the frameworks, and the processes, and our ways of working. So, it is very difficult to bring about cultural change. But in fact, I think some models even say that all change will be resisted. Right? It starts with resistance. Any change. So typically, what you would see would be some of the barriers of change. Right? I think one is education. One is knowledge. Right? So the stakeholders or the participants of the change are skeptical. They don't know why the change is being inflicted on them, or they may know, but they may not really know the actual version of the truth behind it, right? So they may hear a version of it, and so on. So they have a perception of why that change is impeding on them. I think the way to deal with that is education. Provide them that knowledge. As leaders, we have to be very clear, right, about why we need this change, what we are going to do as part of that change, and then the call to action. So, you are a change agent, you are a stakeholder in this change. So, what is it that you, either at the leadership level, or at the frontline manager level, or even at the individual contributor, the associate, at the employee level, or the other stakeholders, right, the vendors, the clients, the customers, and so on, what is your call of action? What is expected from you to be a successful change agent, to be part of the solution? um, that is key, and that is something that is the onus of the leadership, to bring about that, to bring about that education and educate. I think the second barrier is generally history, the past history of the organization, or the company, where such change, in the previous past, in the previous circumstances, how the company has led and managed change, right? So, and it does not have to be success or failure, but the way they have done it. So even if they have failed to bring about a change, have they been transparent? Have they come back to everybody who were a part of this program? Have they communicated well? The lessons learned, what worked, what didn't work, what were the failures? Because the cost of failure is huge, and an organization cannot afford to fail again and again, right? So we need to be completely transparent as leaders. Talk about our failures also, and that itself will gain the trust and transparency. I think some organizations have been very, very good. For example, Mozilla has been very good at talking about it to its customers, right? So that is very important. And I think the question that, one of the questions that you asked was, should a leader bring about a change? I think definitely, when a new leader comes in, they're already part of an agenda, right? The change in that sense has already been kick-started. There's a reason why they've been brought in, right? So that is very, very important for the leader to understand, why he or she is here, what is the goal, behind it, and try and understand that completely. What is their role? because only then they can, take up that ownership and lead authentically, right? With authenticity. That is very important. Not just walking the talk, or, not just doing like a checkbox activity, right? So they have to, because they are the ambassador, they are the, face of that change. So they have to be very authentic about it and not just bring disruption for disruption's sake. I think let's be very clear, the organization has to be sustained, and it cannot withstand shocks or changes just because, right? So it has to be, the intent has to be very clear. And I think we also spoke about what are the benefits of change, cultural change. I think, any organization, just like Hemal said, right? I mean, we either we lead it, we seize the opportunity, or, we be left behind. Um, and there's so many examples in history, especially in information and technology, where, companies which have not really seized that opportunity have, stopped being market leaders or even players. They've been eased out of the market. So very important, the benefits, far outweigh the risks. In fact, it's also been proven that, such organizations are very resilient, adaptable, they can adapt very well to change. And I think, they have a more diverse, view, and a very optimistic outlook towards the future. Um, so those are the key benefits. And pitfalls, again, I think, I would just like to probably just take one out of the many. I think most of the change, when you see, it is top down, meaning, it is something which comes as part of strategy, and, which is then, upon the managers and the different rungs of leaders to take forward. So depending upon the organization size and, the setup, the structure, communication can get lost sometimes, right? And what is the purpose of the change? That can also get lost. So it's very, very important for, managers and leaders to make sure that there are check-ins, there are appropriate, routines where, you are checking in if that change is being communicated correctly, and making sure that, you are course correcting. If there is any, change in the agenda, or, if there's any change which is not intended, you have to course correct. And for that to happen, you need to have an error budget. You need to make sure that, okay, if there has been something, which is coming from the ground, there is some resistance, and that resistance is valid, that's something which is not factored at the top, right? You need to make sure that, you are including that in the change. And this feedback loop is important, and for that to happen, you need to have a good error budget, and you need to have a culture where, you are failing early, you are, talking about that failure, and you're then injecting those learnings back to the process. So I hope I have been able to answer that question. um, uh, Ajay, over to you, or any one of you, really.
I will like to extend a bit to what Chitra mentioned. So Chitra has covered most of the point in terms of the change leader and the way the change leader handle different parameters while driving the culture change. One thing what we have observed in the industry, typically this new leader comes as a change agent. He or she tries to bring in a new structural change in the organization. So the first thing what we have observed is done is the changing the organization hierarchies or the structure. In my perspective, that is not really required, because usually it brings some kind of a disturbance to the people those are onboarded in the journey. So probably that factor is not really essential to make the culture change, and we can focus on all other things what is covered by Chitra. So I would like to stop here. We'll add more as we go ahead. Over to you, Hemal or Ajay.
Yes, thanks, Prashant. I was just wanted to add, because Ajay, I wonder how have you formed this question? Such a power-loaded question, right? And heads off to you, Chitra. You have brought in amazing points like trust, top-down approach, right? And is that organization ready to build that cultural change? Okay, and this is where I many a times, when as a coach, when I have the interaction with the CEOs, it's like saying I'm excited, to get married, right? Marriage is such a wonderful thing, right? And then you know the pros and cons because there is going to be a cultural change after the marriage, right? And then once you are married, and after some time, then you look forward and identify who is that person or a consultant or a coach or a facilitator or a trainer to whom I can outsource this change. Why? It's not going to work like that, right? If you want to really bring the cultural change, as rightly Chitra mentioned, it has to be top down approach, right? You cannot outsource that cultural change. It's your marriage, you are married to this organization, right? How can you outsource that, right? Yeah, if you can go to a marriage counsel if you need bits and bits, right, or strategies for that. But it's very important here, okay, to understand that most of the CEOs, when I personally interact with them, okay, I don't mind saying this on the open forums, 7 out of 10 CEOs operate from I know it all zone. Whether you are a new CEO in the organization or an existing one, okay, till the time I do not move that mindset change and moving away from I know it all zone to I don't know, okay, which is the starting point of curiosity. Okay, and that curiosity is something that helps us to innovate. That's an agile mindset, right? We are not stuck with what knowledge I have or my people have, right? It's constantly, am I moving in from a mindset of curiosity, a mindset which is in hunger, in search of new ideas, new innovations, and saying that I don't know, okay, and constantly challenging self, challenging the core people, okay. And in fact, this is where I love the question. While doing the research of Steve Jobs, the moment he used to enter the organization, he would simply move around to the people, and everyone knew, okay, I'm setting the background, everyone knew what is the question Steve is going to ask, okay, but still they would wonder, okay, now how is this guy is going to, and he would ask only two simple questions: why are you doing what you are doing? What is completely a different way of doing the same thing in less time? This is exactly the agile mindset. You're constantly challenging yourself, you're constantly questioning yourself and adapting to the new culture. And that's where I want to submit my response to this is: how can you learn the art and science of asking questions instead of answering it? Agile mindset or the cultural change is moving away from I know it to I don't know, and that is where you need to learn to ask right questions. Or let me warn you, okay, we are not talking about asking questions like Arnab Goswami, please. Okay, we are learning about how to ask the right coaching questions. Over to you, Ajay.
Yeah, thanks, Hemant, Chitra, Prashant. That's a wonderful things that you brought in. So I know it all. To I don't know is basically empowering the people. You give us the solution. Okay, so when empower people are empowered, you get the best solution and the best action. What are you doing? Is the purpose. If you know the purpose, you can build the things better. That's what Apple has. I mean, today if you see Apple, it's the purpose. I mean, what are you doing? Such a simple thing they have done. So thank you all. The next question will be: what tools and techniques or models can be used to bring about the organization change?
Yeah, maybe Ajay could take that. And thanks, Hemal, for building in those nice, humorous examples. I'm sure all of us connect with them. It kind of sticks onto our minds when we hear about, how and why the changes are required. But even this question that you're asking, Ajay, I think I'd like to build on what they have already spoken about in terms of having a new leadership, how the leadership tends to kind of bring in these direction changes within the organization, and maybe moving away from a command and control into a more open kind of organization. That is the trend that we are seeing across. So, basically bringing about change is definitely a gnawing problem that all organizations face. And very simply put, change is never going to be easy. And especially in the context of business, we see that one change actually has a rippling effect on many other areas. So, a large change that we're drawing within the organization, it is going to impact many other things. So let me start with a very basic principle and talk about thinking from the first principles, and this is also part of a design thinking. So how is it actually being used currently by various organizations? Now, when we talk about first principle thinking, it is more like going back to the basic drawing board and asking what is the product or what is the process that we are actually working on, and whether it is even meeting the intention of what it was expected to meet. And this is what I think both of them kind of mentioned, Chitra and Hemal, to say what is it that you're doing, why are you doing, whether it is relevant, whether it fits the context. That means people need to really go back and look at the base problem itself, rather than continuing to work as an automaton to say, okay, these are the activities that need to be done and need to keep going. And that is where that piece of innovation has to actually bake in. So to give you a much more specific example, if we think about what Elon Musk actually did, his approach is different. He did not really adopt an approach of analogy or doing any derivative kind of design. When he actually wanted to get into this electric car space, he was basically thinking from first principles, in the sense that he wanted to just launch or maybe resolve the problem of transportation and mobility. So he started looking into the constituent components of it, not at looking at how could we redesign fuel cars. Okay. And if we actually try to compare with what Elon Musk is doing now to what Carl Benz had actually done in the 1800s when he invented the gasoline cars, he was also thinking of something similar. So he did not try to really optimize the carriage designs then, which most of the others were trying to do. He tried to solve the fundamental problem of transportation itself and what could be some of the applied capabilities that are required. So he tried to bring in this concept of combustion engines to create something which was new and different. Now, coming back to Musk, because that is much more recent, I would say, he has questioned the design of the existing cars that we have now and whether it is really, achieving the intended task of simple mobility. So he put out a mission to say that we need to accelerate some kind of a sustainable transport. And that is where we saw the advent of electric vehicles. Now, not that he really invented it, but he actually brought it to a space where it could gain more mass acceptance. Now, how has he actually done it? So when Elon actually started thinking about this, he has thought about not only the electric cars, their design, but he has also thought about the sales and distribution. So much of Tesla's cars are actually not sold through franchisees. They have their own setup and own network through which they actually do the sales. Then they have also thought about the servicing, and they have also thought about how to create a network of charging stations, because that seems to be a very core problem. So this holistic approach, which is also known as systems thinking, thinking about the end to end rather than just thinking about the product that they are building at hand, is definitely important. So these kind of techniques, just going back to the basics and thinking about the first principles, is definitely something which is at the root of innovation, I would say. And it helps us to actually redesign, reimagine the entire gamut of activities. But now, just coming back more operationally to the question that you've asked in terms of, what tools and techniques could be of aid. When we start off, just creating something as simple as a flow chart, or creating something very simple as a process map to visualize the existing process setup, and then see what is the future state that we are actually trying to look at. So the the existing, which yields the core outcomes, versus the future state that we want to go into, versus the outcomes. And this visualization is actually quite a powerful technique. And as I think they've mentioned earlier, the communication of the things that are going to undergo change is definitely required in the organization. So what is changing, why this change is occurring, and why is it required for the people in the organization to be onboarded on the change? So that helps, this communication actually helps to build, I would say, trust and a desire amongst the employees that they start supporting the change instead of resisting the change, it comes to them naturally because they see the trajectory, or they're able to see the roadmap or the larger vision that they are about to, kind of traverse and make new things happen. Now, this communication, of course, all very simple and known techniques like running campaigns, doing town halls, sending out leadership messages, etc. All of this are definitely, good techniques that need to be employed. And then we have, at the employee level, they need to be enabled. So, we also spoke about knowledge sharing, so that we have, more of job aids for the employees, so that they are able to run with, the current changes, and then to see the impact, gathering feedback, conducting assessments. These could be the other tools and techniques, and just gauging what is the return on investment. And the final point that I would like to mention is, how do we ensure that these changes are getting sustained? So there has to be this continuous reinforcement that needs to be done in terms of the changes that are brought about, so that people don't start falling back to the older mechanisms just because the changes that are brought in are not sustainable in nature.
Thanks, Koel. So lot of points are covered when we talk about tools, methodology, and techniques. So Koel covered about the design thinking, innovation, the necessity of the communication tool, and yes, she explained about the current state and the future state, what we call as the value stream mapping. In add to that, I will also cover a methodology part, which is of my favorite and which comes from a knowledge base called as a scale agile framework. What they talks about is a dual operating model. So what is this dual operating model says that let's have your existing hierarchical structure in place and create another group of people, what we call as a value stream. So this set of people drives the goal and they work in the same wavelength. So they drives the organization culture irrespective of the reporting hierarchy, irrespective of the departments or the units they are coming from. So this is a set of people, those who form the value stream, and this value stream itself is a representation of the culture to achieve the goal. So this particular fundamental structure or the concept of the dual operating system helps us a lot in terms of driving the culture change. And when it comes to the implementation, so those models or the methodologies or the tools are adopted from the top. So the leadership gives the required go ahead budget or the approvals to bringing those tool or the methodologies, but the implementation starts from bottom to up. So the team adapts to those changes, brings in those practices on the day-to-day basis, and then which result back into the cumulative value addition to the organization. So I think this is a right approach or the most suited approach what I have observed while driving the change using various tools, methodology, and the techniques. So this is 2 cents from me, Ajay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the wonderful inputs. We have around 6 minutes left, so we can take just maybe one or two questions. The question in the chat box from Gaurang is, do you think transparency is key for any change? If yes, then how do you bring in transparency in the organization as a change leader and take everybody together?
Okay, I'll take this up, Ajay. Okay, this is very interesting. Transparency, right? Can you have a successful marriage without transparency? Think about it. Yeah, you want to build a cultural change, right? And that cultural change without transparency is like one side, I'm going to wear a mask but I want everything from you. Not possible. Let's be very real. In fact, one of the key thing in CEO club, that's the group where multiple CEOs comes together, is the culture of board. Okay, how can I have an open hearted conversation, okay, in a very safe environment? It's very important for organization to create that culture. Can I be vulnerable in front of others? Can I be trusted? Okay, and that's the thing that has to happen from the top. Okay, to create that small boards, okay, small groups where you can be vulnerable. Okay, you can allow somebody to question and challenge your decisions, your mindsets. Okay, and that's where exactly is the key stuff. Transparency is like your heartbeat, right? You need to have an ecosystem to have an open-hearted conversation. Without that, nothing is possible. That's from my side, Ajay.
Yeah, maybe, just to build on very briefly on what Hemal mentioned, is the sense of the psychological safety. I think where we are moving towards is celebrating failures, not just celebrating successes. And the idea is when people fail fast, there are a lot of learnings out of it. So they are not going to repeat the same thing again. And of course, this, transparency where people are, able to take risks, try something new. Even if it fails, it is fine. So that space has to be given to all the employees where they're able to bring out their creative side of things, and that will definitely lead to innovation.
Great. Would Prashant or Chitra like to add?
Was just holding back because I don't know how we're doing on the time front. But I mean, I think definitely, I just concur with, Hemal and Koel. But I also want to, like call out that, when you're a leader, you cannot always be transparent. You cannot, always, give strategy, insights to your team. It happens, right? You have to play it a little bit smart and savvy. But in terms of what is expected from that person or from that stakeholder or from that team, you have to be very clear. And so with that in mind, you can then be transparent about what is expected from them. And I think that's what, when you're saying, bring in that psychological safety, or bring in that transparency, so that show your vulnerability is on point, because you are showing them that I don't have all the answers. I can fail, and so can you, right? So it's important, but again, contextualize. You cannot always put
Yeah,
all the
great
cards on the
thought.
table.
And one of the recent concepts is invitation to change. I am planning to bring this change who all people are with us. To take a small group of people, get the change, build the trust, and move on to the next project. So I think we had a very wonderful discussion. We will have 2 more minutes to go, and we are right on time. We have a lot of points which were brought in today. We have disruption, internal, external. We have the concept of marriage as brought about by Hemal, the question man, which really explain the complex leadership in very simple terms. And we have a lot of other things like training, communication, change is constant. And the questions like what you are doing, the purpose has to be very clear so that you get the right products at the time. And how can I do it better? So these all would help us. Over to you, Nupur.
Thank you so much, Ajay, for this amazing facilitation of this discussion. And I thank you all, Koel, Prashant, Chitra, and Hemal, for bringing out different perspectives and insights and experiences for all of us to take back as key takeaways. So, thank you, everyone, once again.